be with us this afternoon as we discuss a very contentious topic, a very provocative topic in sibling squabbles. My name is Matt. I'm pleased to co-host today's session along with Steph, who's our wonderful parent, educator, and extraordinary mum. And we're going to share some perspective with you today. Steph, good afternoon.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for that.
It's all right. We're excited to jump into it already. I love it. But before we start, families, thank you for turning up. A few housekeeping rules. If you've got any questions at all during the sessions, or you want to disagree or agree or affirm, you are more than welcome to engage in the chat function. So please pop your questions in there. We have tailored the session around some of the questions that were submitted prior. So we will get to some of those and hopefully address some of those. But due to the overwhelming number of responses we've had, Steph will also be hosting an in-person workshop on the 1st of June from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. And this will be a face-to-face workshop, which we're lovely and excited that we can start hosting these again. And so if you're interested, the workshop registration will be popped in the chat link soon. There we go, very soon. So you're welcome to click on that. And if you want to explore this topic a little bit further in a more face-to-face context, we encourage you to sign up for that session on the 1st of June. But if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as we go, and we will respond accordingly, and we'll take it from there. But let's get things started. I'd like to introduce Steph, our co-host today. Stephanie's a mother of two. She's an Eaton House Broadrick parent. And as a parent educator, she's got over 15 years of experience in the education industry, teaching both children and adults. And we know there's a lot of similarities there between children and adults when we work with them, Steph. And as a parent effectiveness trainer and self-regulator, she is a strong advocate for authenticity in parenting. And she hosts book clubs, facilitates workshops, counsels in online parenting forums, and organises playgrounds in nature so families can access ongoing support in their parenting journey. And families, that's what it is. It is a journey, and we're here to share some perspectives and hopefully learn a little bit from you as we share our thoughts as well. So good afternoon, Steph.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for that lovely introduction and starting us off. I'm going to introduce you in return. Matt is currently the principal of Middleton International School. He's an experienced educational leader, both in Melbourne and here in Singapore. Matt has a Bachelor of Education from Melbourne, a Master's in Education from Monash, and a Graduate Diploma of Psychology from Monash, and a Graduate Certificate in Education. He's well versed in education and children. Matt's ambition is to see all students flourish through both academic and social emotional learning, which is why we're here today. He is also a father of three, and on weekends can be found running, walking, and exploring Singapore with his family. So he's basically a really busy guy, and we're really lucky to have him today, right? To talk about siblings. So just out of interest, Matt, have you got any siblings of your own?
I do, Steph. I'm the eldest of three, so I've got a younger sister who's also in education. I think we influence each other there, and my younger brother who's in Melbourne at the moment, and he's into sustainability and the environment. So I'm the oldest of three, and I think for all intensive sakes, we fit it into those oldest, middle, and younger child box, all too stereotypically. How about you, Steph?
Yeah, I'm the youngest. I'm the opposite. I'm the baby. My sister's 5 years older than me. She's the responsible one. We'll be talking about children's roles, sibling roles a little bit later, and what that might mean for your children and how they feel about their siblings. So let's just get stuck into it. We've been absolutely blown away by the response to these webinars, and today is no exception, probably because sibling relationships are a really hot topic with parents, largely because, as most of you know, they're complex, their rivalry can be petty, can be intense, can be frustrating, and can take a lot of our time. So with that in mind, we'll be taking a three-pronged approach today to our discussions. We'd firstly like to touch upon different parenting styles, and we'll invite you to do a bit of reflection upon your childhood experiences, because that has a lot to say about what we do today with our own children. Then we'll be dipping into typical bread and butter sibling squabbles and scenarios that we face on a daily basis, often more than once on a daily basis, and we'll be offering some hands-on guidance and tips of what we could do in that moment to help them and help ourselves. And then we'll close the discussion with some parents asked us, what can we do to help the relationship between our children, to reduce the squabbles? And we've got some tips on what we do at home to help our kids with their relationships. But before we move on to our discussions point, Matt and I would like to really point out that we're very aware that we are talking to a very multicultural community today. And our approach to sibling squabbles is based on the belief that all children are capable and deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and compassion. So we do not advocate for punishments or rewards, and that is a totally separate webinar in itself, but that's where we're at today. Our approach here is based on some research and our personal experiences, and as you'll see, we have different takes on parenting. So hopefully that will provide some good food for thought for you out there today. And our hope is that you at least take away one thing that you can do to help your children during the hard times when they're arguing with their brother or sister. Okay.
No, thanks for that, Steph. And I think that is a really important aspect to reiterate, that we wanted to share some stories with you, but we think it's really important that you start as parents thinking about your own journey through childhood. What did you love and what were you inspired about from your own parents? But what were the things that sort of aggravated you and drove a wedge in some ways? And often as parents, and Steph and I were talking about this earlier last week, that we don't get a license for parenting. We're kind of thrust into it and we do our best. So for everybody who turned up today, a big thank you for spending some time with us, but also being vulnerable enough to reflect on our ability to parent. And this is something that I think all of us should be doing constantly, thinking about our choices and how we impact our children. So start us off, we'd like to invite you to reflect on your own childhood experiences and join us in answering a provocation or a question. So we're going to share with you a Mentimeter link in the chat to share your anonymous answer with us. So we're hoping here for a sense of authenticity. We know that when people show up to learning and are honest, they get more out of it. And a beginner's mindset that no matter how old your children are, how many kids you are, we all have so much to learn from each other. So I encourage you to reflect on this question. So we're going to start with the question, what did your parents do to hurt the relationship with your siblings? If you don't necessarily have a sibling, consider the relationship between aunts and uncles and cousins or other people you grew up with, or might even be how did the teacher respond to you in class that looked at that comparison. So we've got some answers coming in already, but we'll give you 60 seconds just to reflect and consider that question around what was your own experiences. And again, this is anonymous, so you feel free to be as open as you like.
So if you click on the link on the chat, and then it'll bring everybody's responses up anonymously. But someone's typed in compared us. I'm familiar with that. Someone else on the chat has written took sides. Yeah. So the link, someone's asking where is the link? Eunice in the background. Eunice, could you post the link for us? There it is. And then there's a code there that we type in. Thanks, Eunice. So we'll see what people are responding anonymously. Oh, favorite child. Yeah. Felt like my sibling was the preferred child. Having different expectations. Oh, that green one's a bit painful. Laugh at mean jokes against me. Yeah. So I'm hearing that there was probably some labeling there, and you were probably in a certain role, and everyone in the family joined in with that.
So we'll give you just another minute. You're welcome to reiterate what somebody else has said, or just to reflect privately if you like as well. But we are seeing some consistent trends here around comparison and around that perception of not being the favorite child, or perhaps there was a hierarchy of standards or of love. And I think it's a really difficult thing, but it makes you realize that when we step back and reflect on this, that often there's a little bit of trauma there. And we know that our parents did the best job that they could, but we do carry these things through with us. And within a minute or two, we can bring these to mind. And sometimes we always, or not sometimes, but generally we remember the negative a lot stronger than we do the positive. And we are going to flip this question in a minute and get you to think about the other side of the coin as well. So we're not here just to drum up some negative emotions and trauma for you all. But if you have a look through there are some similarities and threads coming out around comparison and around double standards, around that perception that someone was getting something that was unfair or unjust, and that left you feeling a little bit resentful and disconnected.
Yeah, and how it follows into today. Someone's written there, feeling nervous right now about how to handle my own children because of my childhood experiences. So hopefully we feel that we're not alone in this. Hopefully the power of these comments coming through is that people are aware that we have our own struggles and that's okay.
Oh, very much, Steph. I think that's an awesome point, that if you look at the similarities here, this is from everybody who are going through similar things through their childhood, but it's a good opportunity to stop and realize that these are the things that are with us today as parents, and how we're in a unique opportunity now to prevent this from occurring in our own families, because this is obviously something that is still resonating with a lot of us.
Yeah, stop the cycle. Can we share the other Mentimeter question, which is the other side of the coin, because we're not here just to talk about the negatives, but to help you reflect on both sides. So the question is, what did your parents do to support your relationship with your siblings? So hopefully there's some stuff here that we can share that was successful and that you can implement today, but also Matt and I will be adding to this list for you guys as well. There's the Mentimeter link just come through there on the chat. What did your parents do, Matt, to enhance your relationship with your siblings?
Oh, I was just deep in reflection myself there, Steph. You caught me off guard. I was mulling that one.
If you don't want to answer, do you want to see what other people come up with first?
No, I was thinking about the negativity bias, and there was some interesting research from Sean Aker, and he talked about how as humans we remember the negative so much more articulately and visually than we do the positive. And I think I was sort of musing on that it's easy to jump into the negative, to say this is what my parents did to separate us, and perhaps there was elements of preferential treatment and things like that, and there might have been gender biases for some people as well.
Yeah,
realizing that there were probably as many positive things that were happening on the flip side. It's just that it's a lot harder to remember those. We're geared to really remember negative feedback and criticalness. So it's lovely that people are thinking now of some of those positive things. And for us, it was investing in shared experiences. The more time we spent together having a common goal, the more that we realized that, we all got along and we had a strong relationship. So for me, one of the things that our family did was invest in that time together, whether it was on school holidays or weekends, but collectively doing things together improved our relationship for me.
That's really lovely. And that's what's coming out. What you've just said is basically what's coming out. Lots of time together, asking children to be, lots of playtime in childhood, shared things, reassured us that it's okay to be different. This is great. Celebrate our differences.
Yeah, no, I saw that one too, Steph. I love that too, about acknowledging that our kids are different. Genetically, they're different. Environmentally, they go through different things, even if they're under the same roof. So it is important to allow our kids to be unique and to be them, which is awesome. So we'll give you just another 20 seconds. I'm mindful that we could spend the entire session, Steph, here just mulling over our own journey before we look at our kids. And so we are going to move on. So we'll just give you another 10 seconds there just to jot those down. For me, the resounding takeaway is that these are conceptual understandings, that it's not us in a silo experiencing our relationship with our parents that nobody else felt. It sounds like there are some common threads there around competition and comparison. And at the same time, the antidote to that possibly is a lot of time together, shared experiences, investing in acknowledging that our kids are different, but also bringing them together for a common reason. And that idea that sharing as part of the family is really important too.
Yeah, absolutely agree that we're products of our past experiences in childhood, and that's evident from parents sharing here today. So I'd like to ask you then, Matt, with that in mind, could you talk us through the 4 typical parenting styles that we may have experienced growing up, and that help the parents joining us today reflect a little bit about where they're at with their current parenting styles?
Happy to, Steph. So I think we're going to share a slide with you now, parents, to get you to reflect on your own parenting style, but also just to give you a perspective from research. So again, this is not mine or Steph's perspective. This is some research and some literature out there on the different types of parenting. It's important to note that it's a bit of a continuum. So you've got demandingness along the bottom in terms of setting high expectations at one end, and no expectations on the bottom. And then on the other axis, you've got responsiveness. So not really being responsive, neglectful, up to lots of love and TLC. And as parents, it would be lovely if we all fit into the one box that we think is ideal, but we know that at different circumstances, sometimes even different times of the day, perhaps you're a much more effective parent in the morning, but it gets to late night and you realize that's when you're most vulnerable. So we all do slide and move around on the continuum, and it's definitely not fixed. But the 4 styles that consistently come out in research for different types of parenting are these on the screen in front of you. So on the left-hand side, in terms of responsive, at the very bottom, with low levels of responsiveness and low levels of demanding, we've got neglectful parenting. And this is not a space that you want to be in. It's as a parent where you are uninvolved and absent, provides little nurturance or guidance, and is a bit indifferent to a child's social, emotional, and behavioural needs. And it's that stepping back and that apathetic approach to parenting, which is not conducive to a well-balanced child at all. If we go further up, and we've got low levels of demandingness, but high levels of love and care, we've got what sometimes can be described as permissive parenting. This is child-driven, which is a good thing at times, but it means rarely giving or enforcing rules or expectations. So if a toddler is complaining and they want candy, we just give them bucket loads of candy because we love them. We want to do what's right for them. And we don't set boundaries because we want to be their best friend. And so sometimes a long-term approach lands you in this bucket. And it means that we overindulge our kids and we avoid conflict. And conflict is a negatively loaded term, but it can be a really positive thing. And part of what Steph and I want to weave in today's session is that conflict is an opportunity to understand your child's perspectives, but also to better improve your own parenting styles. On the bottom end in green, we've got authoritarian, which is top down. It's more of a direct, as a parent, I have power over you. You are a child. Therefore, if I say you must do your homework now, it is not a discussion, it is must. And there are time for boundaries, but this is going to the extreme. So setting strict rules and punishments, one-way communication, and not really valuing that children have a voice, and particularly not being able to make that transition between, say, toddlerhood and primary to teen, and realizing that as your kids change, so too do you need to change your parenting as their needs develop. And the sweet spot parents that we're all aiming for, which we would love to think that we are in this box all of the time, is authoritative parenting. And this is the box that research suggests produces not only better academic results, better rounded children, high levels of well-being, and just happier kids. So it's looking at high levels of love and care, but also high expectations. So it's solving problems together with children. It's setting clear rules and expectations, open communication, and natural consequences. It's that idea that our children know at all times they are loved and they are enough. But as a family, we have a cultural set of expectations that we speak kindly, we don't use our hands for violence, and we expect this, and this. The next slide, Eunice, is a more of a simplified version of that. Angela Duckworth calls it wise parenting. It's exactly the same. And so for me, it's not so much what you want to label it, but we're heading towards that box where we want to be supportive and loving, but it is crucial that we are setting high expectations as well. So we wanted to share that with you just to get you thinking about your own parenting styles and the research behind it. It's interesting. I'll read you a short excerpt from Angela Duckworth. See, I came so prepared today, Steph. It's a surprise myself. But she says, regardless of gender, ethnicity, social class, or even parents' marital status, teens in particular with warm, respectful, demanding parents earned higher grades in school, were more self-reliant, suffered less anxiety, depression, and were less likely to engage in delinquent behaviour. So as parents, we often try to control everything, but the one aspect that we can work towards is that idea of wise parenting. So we wanted to share that with you as we get into looking at our siblings, because so much of it comes down to who we are as parents. So Steph, might hand over to you to take this forward from here.
Yeah, before I go on to my next bit, I just wanted to reflect something that came to me when you were talking then, when I was looking at the diagram, and how permissive parenting is they have too much of a voice, and authoritarian is they don't have enough of a voice, and then authoritative is it's equal, and that we're equal in this relationship as parents and children, and that's what makes them resilient, and all the things that you just talked about in that quote from Angela Duckworth. Okay, so moving on to the discussion, I'd like us to think a little bit more about why we're here today and why why is it that our kids are rivals and they argue? Even if our kids their characteristics are innately calm and loving, there will always be some form of rivalry. But why? My favorite way of explaining this is with the new wife analogy that has always just really hit the nail on the head for me. So stick with me as I talk you through this scenario. Imagine one day your spouse puts an arm around you and says, I love you so much, but you're so wonderful that I've decided to get another wife just like you. And when she finally arrives, you notice that this younger and cuter model is much nicer than you and getting a lot of attention. So when other members of the family meet her and they exclaim how adorable and perfect this new wife is, and they turn to you and ask, how do you like the new wife? One day, as the new wife grows and matures and you find them and your spouse on the bed together and he's tickling her and they're laughing, your spouse suddenly jumps up and says, he has to pop out, could you keep an eye on the new wife? So imagine how that would feel for a child to have a new sibling come into the house. They might feel less than accepting. According to Faber and Maslish, which is one of the authors that I follow, who wrote the book How to Talk to Your Kids and They'll Listen, they say the root cause of sibling jealousy is each child's deep desire for exclusive love of their parents. So it's because mum and dad have all the things that the child needs to survive. They give food, shelter, love, and a sense of identity. So having a sibling casts a shadow on this huge need to thrive, and the sibling's mere existence will immediately mean less of everything, less time, less love, less attention. And when Matt and I were preparing for this, we reflected that even starts when you are pregnant and the baby hasn't arrived yet, because you're more tired and you need more rest, and already this new sibling is if we were to see it as a training ground and a place to practice social skills, problem solving and negotiation, then we'd look at it differently. So with that in mind, if we can have a level of acceptance that this is what's going to happen. So if you go on holiday and you expect it to be all without any single arguments, then you're kind of setting yourself up for a fail. So if you can accept it, it makes it a little less painful. That's what I'm saying. So going back to the training ground idea, if you've ever noticed that your children might behave really nicely for other adults and not so nicely for you, it's because they feel safe with you, and they'll feel safe with their sibling because their sibling will love them no matter what. They're not going anywhere. So yes, our children's bickering is really frustrating, but it's a really valuable training ground for them, and they get to learn so many skills as a result. Matt, anything to add?
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Sorry, my video froze there for a little bit, so I was just catching up. It is a really difficult one. I think Brene Brown talks about parenting, and she says that the best advice you could give parents is to be the adult you want your kids to be, which is quite confronting in the sense that it is a really hard gig. And I think that often what I found through research and life experience is that when there are disagreements and conflicts, it always happens when the parents are tired too. It's always at the end of the day or when you're in a rush to get to work. And so a lot of these ideas, we want you to contextualize as much as possible and to show a lot of self-compassion for yourself. It's really important as parents that like Steph said right at the beginning, this is a journey, and that we develop our skills and our dispositions as we go. So I think to build on those ideas, Steph, for me, one of the key benefits of siblings, when there's any conflict, even if it's, who's going first and which seat in the grab or the taxi or getting on and off public transport, it can be a really good teachable moment to look at perspective taking. And it's developing that sense of empathy as early as possible. And it might start even before the brain's fully formed in terms of having a really deep understanding of empathy, but you put in routines to develop empathy so that if someone's upset, you sit with your children and ask them, okay, can you tell me what do you think child A is feeling right now? Have a look at her face. What's her body language showing? And so very early on, we stop whenever there is conflict or tension and take that moment in time to develop perspective taking, because as your children grow, that is such a crucial skill, and that empathy is going to help your children read each other's body language, but also have the discernment to realize when they've gone too far and to step back because they're able to read each other. And I like that, thinking about preparing when you have a sibling, preparing when your spouse is pregnant. And I think one analogy that I liked is that working with your kids to say that the heart isn't a fixed size, it continues to grow. And so it might be using a visual or a diagram to see that, with one child in the family, the heart is this big and it continues to grow. And so reinforcing from a really proactive standpoint that the heart and your family can continue to grow and accept others in. And I think, Steph, I like that idea too about, we're talking about bids for attention and exclusive love. And so I think a really important one to build into your family culture is always reinforcing this idea that your kids are enough as they are. That striving to be somebody else isn't what you want from them, and that they are truly and deeply loved as they are. And I think that the more that people in general, adults, and particularly our kids, understand that their bucket is full just by being them, it means that we reduce the need for comparison and competition because they are enough, but it also means that they're more open to more positive emotions. So that's a lot to think about, families, and hopefully we're getting you parents to reflect, and you might write down some notes and things as we think about, what does this look like in our family? What does it look like at our dinner table when we're having dinners, or perhaps when we're rushing at the door in the morning? So the next part that we want to segue into is this idea of comparisons, because we know it happens. As much as we would like to live in an ideal world where it doesn't happen, we do it as adults, our kids do it, and they see us do it with the world around us as well. So Steph, why do you think we're doing this so much to each other, and why are our kids doing it, and what do we do about it?
This is such a big one. Even just this morning, in the space of 20 minutes, my kids were just comparing each other. Mine are 5 and 6, just constantly over reading. I can't do that, he can do that, I'm not doing it. And it is a huge issue in my head. So these statements, they just come out of our mouths, they come out of their mouths, and whether it's positive or negative, so comparisons can be positive or negative, it just doesn't feel nice to be compared. So I would like parents to take on the role of your child, and I'd like you to see what reaction, if any feelings you have when I say the following 3 things to you. First one, your sister has such beautiful table manners. You'd never see her standing on the chair whilst eating. The next one, you're so lucky to have a sister that helps you tidy up your mess all the time. And lastly, I see you found the laundry basket today. Your sister always knows where it is. So those are statements that have come out of my mouth, I'll be honest. And then afterwards, I feel a little bit uncomfortable. Matt, any reactions to how that made you feel? Or how it made you feel towards your sister?
No, I was just thinking, as parents, it does come out quickly, Steph. And it's something that, as much as we're working on our children's ability to get along, again, our role in this is fundamental. And the more self-awareness that we develop around the language and the semantics that we're using with the kids, the better. So I think you're right there. I just wrote down that idea that if we're comparing, we're encouraging dissonance rather than unity. And so that the longer that we compare and contrast, we're messaging our kids to say, this is a competition. Even if it's an offhanded comment about, something as silly as, I found the laundry basket, your sister always knows where it is. We're actively saying, she's done a better job than this than you. You need to improve your game. And I know that you and I talk about reframing a lot, about how we can get the same message across without that competition and that dissonance, because I don't think none of us intend to separate our kids. It's not the goal of it, but we do realize that when we're making decisions on the fly and we're reacting to situations, that things sometimes come out of our mouth that we don't necessarily agree with. And for me, one of the family values for us is a Teddy Roosevelt quote, which is just, comparison is the thief of joy. And I love that because it takes that tension out of the situation to realize that you can spend your entire life comparing to the Joneses, to whoever's next door, and all it does is rob you of your own joy. And so regardless of where your kids are at and your family, that you will notice that even as adults, we compare to our neighbor or to our colleagues, that the more that we do that, we're actually taking away our own joy. And then, so I think that as we consider that, Steph, what else would you say to those in that context? How do we reframe without comparing?
So just take the sibling out of the sentence. Just describe what you see, what you hear, and what you feel, and what you need them to do. Just be really explicit. Take the child out. So I'll reframe all those sentences. for the parents here. So your sister has such beautiful table manners, you'd never see her standing on the chair whilst eating. Instead, we could reframe it as, I see you standing on the chair, please sit down whilst we eat, as I need you to be sitting safely. I didn't even mention sister. Next one, you're so lucky to have a sister that helps you tidy up your mess. I see Lego on the floor, I'm worried someone might stand on it, we all know Lego hurts. Can you help me tidy up? Last one, I see you found the laundry basket today, your sister always knows where it is. Could be, thank you for putting your uniform straight into the laundry basket. That means less work for me, I appreciate it. So just describe what you see objectively, leave the other child out of it, and tell them how it makes you feel or what you need. And that will go a long way in reducing the amount of comparisons. But as you said, Matt, it's about having an awareness before it comes out of our mouth. So maybe if we've said it once, like I've not said the laundry thing again, because I see my son's face go, I'm not doing that again. So now I reframe it because I saw he didn't like the way I spoke to him. And that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to learn.
We are. And to be realized that we all make mistakes along the way. I love in that example with the reframing that part of that too is reinforcing desired behaviors so that, parents don't want to become naggers either. Again, that's not a constructive environment when we're just nagging our kids to do things. But I see the Lego on the floor. I'm worried someone might stand up or might stand on it and hurt themselves. Can you help me tidy up? So we're reinforcing this concept of safety and inclusion, which as our kids grow up is crucial. That it's not about mum said do this or dad said do this. It's how do we create a safe family environment? And again, we look at that authoritative parenting where there's a bit of an equal voice there. And that question becomes back to the child, how can we make a safe family environment? Oh, we can tidy up, we can do this, this, and this. So I think reframing those things are really, really important and making sure that the sibling isn't present in any instructional task or reframing. So we have a lot on the agenda today, Steph. We're also going to talk about saying hurtful things before moving into what happens where there is a tension and it can possibly get physical or emotional. So as we move into that space at the moment, what are your perspectives on when kids are saying really hurtful and nasty things?
So my perspective on this, because Matt and I disagree slightly, is that brothers and sisters have to have their feelings heard about each other and they need to have them acknowledged. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm definitely up for that and I really need them to get them out, especially when it comes to my children. So the things that they can say though might trigger us as adults. We might attach our parenting ability or our self-worth to what our children are saying. So things that have come out of my children's mouth, I hate my brother, I wish he was born into another family. I just want to punch his face so hard, he has to go to the hospital. These are really hard for me to hear, but in that sense, my child needed to have their feelings acknowledged. Because if they're not acknowledged, they get very deeper and deeper. So if I say to stop saying that, then they'll just get very deeper and then it'll come out later as more resentment. It needs to be expressed. So 3 things that you can do here in that moment. You can't be triggered to be able to do this. If you are triggered, then you're not the person to step in at this moment. If you could describe what's happening objectively and help them identify their feelings. So for example, the one I want to share with you today is my children were squabbling over balloons from a party, and one had the Hulk and one had the Spider-Man balloon, and my son took both of them and try and de-escalate the situation by explaining, it feels really unfair that your younger brother has both the balloons when you wanted one each. So you try and identify the feelings for them. She's feeling really frustrated because she really wanted one to play with on her own. So that helps them with the language. And that might be enough for them to work it out. There's no judgment in what you're saying, just helping them by sportscasting what you see. The second one might be to grant a wish, or you wish your brother wasn't here right now to take that balloon. If only he was out right now, then you'd have all the balloons you'd want. And again, that might be enough to unleash what they need to. And if it's not, then you could ask them to do something symbolic or creative. So in this instance, I asked my daughter to draw a picture of her brother on the balloon and would she like to pop it? And she actually said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm okay, I'm just really angry. I just wish he wasn't here right now. And that was enough. So I'd taken her to one side and we'd had that conversation. Her brother hadn't heard it. And that was enough for her to just forget about the balloons and walk off and do something else. So we have options of what we can do. And some parents have asked, at what point do we intervene? Do we intervene straight away? Do they expect us to always resolve their conflicts? And for me, it's about sensing what the atmosphere is like. Can you help with just words and then step away and see if they'll sort it out? And you have to step in before it gets dangerous. And that's what Matt's going to lead us on to. What to do. Yeah, unless you wanted to add to that first, Matt.
No, I was just going to reiterate your point that as parents too, you're right. If you're in a reactive state, then you're not in a position to step in because you're already emotionally heightened. And I think the first thing that I would agree with Steph is that if your kids are escalated, they're throwing tantrums, they're using aggressive language or they're getting physical, then there's not a lot of space there to restore or to make good decisions. They're actually using a different part of their brain. And when they're in a heightened state, their amygdala is up. And so there is no amount of reasoning or bargaining that will help in that state. And so the first thing to agree with you, Steph, is that you need to de-escalate the situation. And you need to start wherever you are. So for some families, it might be looking at language and explosive things out of the mouth. Others, it might be physical. Others, it might be sarcasm. And so you choose whichever it is the most important goal for your family. And then you set it as a really clear goal. And you have that discussion as a family to say, in our family, we use kind words, which means we use praise over criticism. And it becomes a mantra and something that as parents, you model, you positively reinforce as much as possible. So Steph, I'm so proud of you for positively reinforcing your brother and saying how well he did today. And so you build that family culture using things like mantras and simple things like that. But definitely agree that if it's already escalated, you cannot solve the problem there. You need to de-escalate through distraction, through breathing, before going back to your family set of values. And I think that there's a very different approach. Reacting to something is putting a Band-Aid on it quickly, which we need to do sometimes when things escalate. But we're far better spending most of our time in the proactive space. So I would encourage families that to sit around the dinner table and to get your kids with you to list the 2 or 3 most important things about their family. And it might be to say kind words, to show physical affection. And from there, you can build in a set of rituals and routines that it might be that your kids, as part of the family agreement, have to go and give each other a hug and a kiss goodnight every night. And you build that into the routine, you praise them up. And so that you start putting in just as much more energy into the proactive culture building than you do the reactive, so that when something does react, it's really clear that they've broken the family contract. And that means that it's not about you telling them off or their sister's got something they haven't done. Whatever the decision is, broke the family contract. So then it also takes the power out of the parent being the bad person to say, hang on a second. Remember how we had that discussion around we build each other up with words? Well, that didn't happen in this instance. What can we do to fix it? And so then we shift to, rather than blame and right or wrong and punishment, to restoration, to say, okay, this is the choice that was made. These are some steps we can take to make it better now. And so obviously for families, to reiterate that you will be coming at this from all different points. And it's okay to know that some of your kids will manifest their aggression in physical, others it'll be words, others it'll just be quiet and not even engaging. And sometimes that's a red flag too, that they just become, oh, I don't even care anymore. And again, that's an opportunity to step in. So we want to reinforce that. As we move down towards our last section, we wanted to give you some practical tips about, okay, how do we foster a positive relationship? Because we know that, yes, that there's something we need to do when it goes wrong, but we need to invest as much as possible in the positive and draw on those ideas that we got out of Mentimeter right at the beginning. So in the last sort of 15 to 20 minutes, Steph, we're going to look at fostering that relationship. And for me, it's a cliche analogy, but it's like watering the garden, that you need to invest time in it for it to grow. And it doesn't just happen. As parents, it sleeves up work. So Steph, what's your perspective on effective fostering of that relationship?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because when I was researching for this webinar, something I came across was a writer, Adele Faber, I think her name is, and she says that whilst as parents we always want to we want our children to have each other's backs and support and love each other, the truth is it's their relationship, as with anybody's relationship, and it's outside of our realm of control. So their personalities, they might just not like each other, or they might really like each other, but then they have their own preferences and their own opinions and their own skills and qualities. So instead of focusing on making them friends, try to equip them with the skills and attitudes, which is what we've been talking about today. So how Matt was just saying, how we build each other up with words, how to have these skills, negotiation, how to make other people feel good, empathy, so that they are capable of having a good relationship. So whether they can't have it with their sibling because they just don't get on, but they can do it with other people outside of the home, and that they can resolve conflicts peacefully, even if they don't get on sometimes, which is fine. So even if they'll never be best friends, at least they have the ability to be a good friend and to be there for their sibling. So how to help the relationship between your children? One of my favorite things is to fill up their relationship bank with you. So something that Matt said, something about pouring, what was your green brown thing that you said about
it was about being the adult that you want your kids to be effectively.
Yeah, and something about something comes out of abundance.
Oh, yeah, that we're parenting from a sense that our kids are loved and enough at the moment, that they are who they are, and that is more than they can ever be, and that striving to please us or to beat their siblings isn't going to change that infinite amount of love we have for them.
Yeah, so that goes hand in hand with the relationship bank. So the more time you spend with your child during peacetime fills their tank of love, so that when they do squabble with their sibling, they're not low tank of energy and love, and they're about to pour out all of their abuse on their sibling. So spending one-on-one time with them, and when you do that, don't talk about the other child, just talk about stuff, talk about them, talk about life. No need to bring in the sibling, just be with them. And it doesn't have to be very much at all, it just has to be a little bit of quality time where they feel connected to you. The next one is don't force togetherness as a family. You don't have to do everything together every weekend, because it can cause more trouble between them. If they're just not in a good headspace right now and they're quarreling, you could one of you does something with mummy and the other one does something with daddy. Or if you have three, you can split it a different way. But take that time to do stuff together, but not always together. Let each child know what it is about him or her that their sibling admires. So everyone will have their own qualities in the family, and let them know that that's the reason why they love them. So this helps to connect them between them. So let them overhear you saying something nice about their sibling to them whilst they're doing something else. And then lastly, family meetings. So discuss family business, make plans, and this can start from an early age. Share nice things about each other, as Matt said, around the dinner table. Solve family problems. So something that I think we're going to have to do going forward, I said to Matt, is mine are getting older now and they don't want mummy and daddy to plan the weekends, that they might have half a day where they get to choose what they want to do, and then the next weekend it's half a day where mummy gets to choose what we do, and that we plan that in, because I'm getting a lot of pushback on, I don't want to do this weekend, mummy, I want to stay in, I want to go out and play with my friends. So that's something we need to talk about in a family meeting. And that gives the child the opportunity, just thinking back to the authoritative parent, where we're in a relationship here and we can communicate both ways and both our needs can be met. Anything to add, Matt, that you do?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those are really, really sound advice there, Steph. And I think that parents, for me, family meetings are just non-negotiable. And it sounds, again, like it's a bit cliche, but as your kids grow up, one of the things from research, but also from just that whole idea of scaffolding, and if you cast your mind back, for those of you who have got really little ones, and you remember teaching them to crawl, to walk, and then to run, there's that different model of parenting. So that when they're beginning to crawl, you are watching everything, you're surveying the ground, you're making sure it's safe. As they begin to walk, you're holding their hands so tightly. As they get to a bit older, then you've just got a hand behind their back and you're guiding them, and eventually you're walking with them. And I think it's really important, because as parents, we need to continually shift our expectations. And it sounds so simple, but the older they get, the more that they want a sense of agency. And it's because that they want to be contributing to something that's not just about mum or dad, again, telling them what to do, which is more authoritarian, to say that we're in this together. And so as parents, it's awkward and it's messy, because you've got to start entertaining all sorts of ridiculous ideas from your kids. But that's also when you go back over perspective taking and empathy, so that there is a collective sense of what we're doing. And I think to build on that, Steph, it's really important, I think, to have a really strong understanding of what it means to be a family. So often that we focus, we're intuitively us-centric, and our kids are, because that's just part of being a kid. And that the more you take that onus off just them being them, to say, as a family, what do we do to make an effective family? Like perhaps we all need to contribute to cleaning. We all need to go and share experiences together. So I think as they get older too, it's understanding that family is an active role. It's not something that you're just lumped with. It's a privilege. but you have to actively contribute. So from a sibling's perspective, part of being an effective family is using encouraging language. And I think that's a really good example. It's awkward to implement at the beginning, but at the same time, you might realize when you're reflecting that perhaps your kids don't actively compliment each other. And that's a great place to start. It's a really simple technique to choose one thing that's really specific. I like the way that Steph tidies up her room. She's a really organized child. And that makes me happy, Steph. Organized. But things like that, you will notice that, and again, I'm stealing research here because I can't help it, but Barbara Fredrickson talks about broaden and build theory, that if you bring positive emotions into your family, it opens your kids up to new learning. It gives them a greater sense of resilience, and selfishly, it makes them feel happy. Genuinely, when our kids give each other compliments and build that out, they become happier as well. And it becomes a bit addictive. So I would agree to that, definitely. And I think you're right. There is an element too that our kids need to have a little bit of time with us one-on-one so that they can be valued for their own journey. Because yes, you want to have your family doing shared experiences together, but at the same time, all of your kids need just 5 to 10 minutes every week to sit down and say, how are you tracking? What's going really well? Let's have that dialogue. What are you struggling with? And have that connection so that they know that they're valued as an individual, but also part of a whole. So I think that were my big takeaways, a lot of emphasis on exactly what you said. And I couldn't agree with you more, Steph, about that relationship bank. And one other flip side to that is that as a parent, once you have filled the bank up with great reinforcement and praise, you also are allowed to take a withdrawal. And that means that's when you can set your boundaries to say, you know what, the answer is no, it's not fair right now, bad luck. And you say it with love, but you're also incredibly firm. So when your emotional account is full, then you can take withdrawals out because it's already there. The issue is that when your child's bucket is empty and you're taking withdrawals out and putting in too harsh an expectations is when that relationship can sort of fracture. But families, we're definitely not saying it's yes to everything, but if you've built that relationship, that currency up, it is okay to say to your kids, you know what, this isn't fair right now. Your sister did this and you didn't, you're loved, move on. And so you lay that foundation down because they know that they're loved and that there's enough in that bank to be able to make that withdrawal if it's necessary. So Steph, we are running out of time, which is crazy. We could be doing this for hours together, but we're going to open the floor up and see families and parents, if there's anything that you wanted to specifically question, challenge, you're welcome to pop it in the chat box. Steph, did you want to add anything at this point?
No, I didn't. You covered it all.
Good. So families, we encourage you to think about some of the things that we've shared with you, or hopefully created a bit of tension and getting you to think about it. We'll let you have a couple of minutes to get some questions generating as they come through now. So thank you for taking the time to pop those in.
Okay, we've got some come through here. How do you deal with kids from friends? Does that mean other your friends' children? They might be arguing. Maybe you can, Andy, can you maybe rephrase that question? And then my kid and kids, friends' kids. Okay, so there might be quarreling. So we're talking about conflict with other children, I think is what he's asking there. Yes, okay, got you. Matt, how do you deal with conflict? In a similar way, I would sportscast it. So sportscasting is just observing, describing what you see. Oh, it looks like, depends on how old your children are, but it looks like Matt is watching the TV right now and he doesn't want to switch it over to something else, or he looks pretty frustrated that he doesn't want to share his TV with you right now, and then just see what comes out of it.
I think it is a really, really difficult, Andy, awesome question. And I think it's going to resonate with a few parents out there. I think my stance on this is that it depends on, definitely contextual. If you're hosting other people's kids at your place, I think you're well within your rights to basically lay out the ground rules to say that when you guys are at our house, for example, we don't use our phones because we want you to engage. And you do it in a really respectful way, but you put those expectations in there. But at the same time, you have to respect that other parents are going to have different perspectives and their behavior is going to be different. And I guess ultimately you want to encourage your kids to make really sound friend choices and friends that build them up and uplift them. And if you see that perhaps that relationship isn't a strong one, then it might be an opportunity to sit down with your child to say, look, I've noticed this and this behavior happening. How does it make you feel? Is this friend, actively making you a better person? And then to jump back to Lucy's question, Steph, so we're sort of mulling over the idea of time in and time out, which is a really interesting one. I'm happy to share a couple of quick thoughts, Lucy, and then ask Steph to build on this. But I think there's a difference. If you're timing out because a situation is escalated, there is sense to that. So if a child is tantruming and the amygdala is already flared up and they're in fight or flight, then yes, remove them from the situation to de-escalate it. But once that de-escalation has come down, the tantrum's over, or they've stopped crying, or they've just had a chance to reflect, then you need to deal with the root issue. Just sending them to time out, letting them cool down, and then coming back into that environment doesn't solve anything. It gives us a breather. So sometimes as parents, sometimes you might need that breather, in which case I understand. But if you don't have that restorative chat after it, then the root issue necessarily won't be resolved. Steph?
Yeah, the concept of timeout, it depends how it's done. So I guess I'm more of a time in fan. So for me, it's I'm not rejecting you or your behavior or right now. It's just that there needs to be a space for you to calm down, and then we can talk about it once you're calm. And for me, it's about them knowing that that's what that space is for. So it's not punishment, and it's not linked to number of minutes in that timeout, linked to age, because I'll calm down when they calm down. And it might be a space that is set up for that if it's happening a lot and that you would have planned with them, that has things in it to help them calm down. It might be that they need an adult. Most often than not, they will do, depending on their age, because we learn to co-regulate with a person before we can regulate on our own. Even as adults, that can be very difficult. So it's about how, not calling it a time in or time out, but this is your zone, this is your space to help calm down, and we'll come back to it. Because if it's seen as a punishment, and when you come back to the conversation, like Matt said, to discuss what the problem was and what the need that wasn't being met, then if it comes across as a punishment, then that gets cut, the connection between what happened and the discussion. So it's not, you will go in that room for half an hour and you will calm down, because that's going to make them feel worse. They need to feel the love in that moment. And if you can't give it to them because you're triggered, then they have a space that is safe for them to do it with another adult, perhaps. Yeah, that's a really great question.
I think just before we move on, I like the analogy on that, Steph, that, for example, if your child breaks a window, punishment isn't going to restore the window necessarily. So it's around, okay, the window is broken. How do we restore that? And it might be, if they're old enough, they pick up the phone and find the glazier and they look at restoring it. But you're right. As parents, sometimes our easy out is to punish, but in essence, over a long period of time, it destroys that relationship between the punisher and the punishee, which is not our intent as parents. Is to build them up and for them to be connected to us. Steph, Chris asked an interesting question around escalation of conflict, and what do you suggest if it gets physical really quickly? What are your thoughts on how do you best engage that?
So I've answered the question, but if it gets physical, I have to step in before it gets physical. You have to physically block the adult. So that's a non-negotiable in our house. If it gets physical, it actually does sometimes. For the child, the physical reaction doesn't come out of nowhere. It's been building in them for a while. So our job is to be a bit of a detective. And if we sense it building, can we step in before it gets physical, before we need to physically block anything, whether it's something being thrown or a hit or a kick? So if you sense the tension building, can you step in and say, I can sense that there is some tension building right now. I don't want things to, if you have something you need to say to your brother or you're feeling frustrated, then we have a safe word, and then the child has to step away if they're feeling overwhelmed, or you have to do it, because it might be that they don't even realize they're about to explode. But sometimes it does seem to come out of the blue. And I would attend to the injured party first, always attend to the injured party. And then once the angry party has calmed down, then we come back and we discuss it. But it might not be straight away, and it has to be when both children are calm enough to do it. So if you want to engage in, I would like you to apologize. I don't force apologies in my house. I want them to do something from the heart, and eventually sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's not just I'm saying sorry and I can pass go and then that's it. I don't have to think about my behavior. They have to do something to show that they feel sorry towards their sibling if they've hurt them. So there's lots to unpack about that. Matt, you want to add anything?
Yeah, look, it's a really tricky one, Steph and Chris. I think, like you were saying, Steph, if it gets physical, you've already lost the battle in so many respects. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, you want to choose your smallest possible viable goal. And so there's not necessarily a hierarchy, but if there was, physical violence would be some of the worst things that you want your kids to be doing. And the first thing would be to reduce that behavior by, like Steph said, okay, they've identified they're feeling angry, and I would rather them shout or be frustrated or say, I'm walking away now, than get physical. So you want to sort of gradually bring that back through goal setting. And from a reactive standpoint, you need to de-escalate, make sure the kids are safe. But then when you go back to that proactive space, you're actively investing that time in with the kids to say, when you're feeling a strong emotion, you walk to your bedroom. When you're feeling a strong emotion, you go and talk to mum and dad. And you're giving them pathways so that when they're triggered, they don't have to make a choice. Because sometimes it depends on the child and the gender and age and all sorts of different things. But when they've had a reaction and they're heightened, they can just respond with a harsh word or a physical act. So you want to get in and have trained them a bit of brain training first, that when they feel that strong emotion, they've got a much more passive, neutral pathway. And it might be that the most effective one is to move away from the situation and go and sit somewhere else and then talk to mum and dad. And I'm not saying just get out of the situation and avoid it, but when they feel that strong emotion, they have a really positive reaction to it rather than an aggressive or a violent one.
Great. In fact, there's another question that's come through that's quite a long one, Matt, so I'll summarize it. But it's basically about what to do when there's an accident that happens between the siblings and they hurt each other, and the younger one is crying, but the older one maybe gets angry at the younger child, and what to do, because this person says that they give the one that did a bit more hurting, the older child, the attention to protect the younger one, but that they'd feel guilty that the younger one doesn't get the attention that they need because they're the ones that got the most hurt. So for me, I would always tend to the injured party, but my gut reaction says to be angry with the other one, the one that did the hurting. But if I can, in the moment, just give myself a breather and a moment to think so I don't react so harshly, then I tend to the injured party. And actually, I find it quite comforting to hold the injured party and to comfort them. It comforts me. And then when I'm clear-headed, then I go and speak to the older one. So in this example, it's the older one, and the older one just needs to be away enough so that no one else is getting hurt. I think so you're trying to stop the older one from hurting the younger one in that situation, because you don't want anyone else to get hurt. I understand that. And that's a tricky one. And that's going back to they're fighting for your attention equally in that moment, and you don't know which way to go. Matt, did you want to add?
No, that's great, Steph. I think we're down to 1 minute, which is crazy. There's a couple of questions that we would just try and touch on just briefly. There was one around twins that I would just ask that if you can give us the age of the twins, that will help us sort of just determine the answer. So if they're very young and they're going for the same object, so just let us know the age of that one. And Ophie's asked, is it appropriate to give consequences for fighting? So if they continue to bicker and fight for that day, the TV goes off or no treats for that day? It's a really good question. Look, not putting my dad hat on, putting a research hat on here. The shorter answer is those type of consequences won't reduce the behavior. They will do it in the short run, but in the long run, then this won't necessarily promote the positive behavior that you're after. It will get them to be frustrated by the person who's punishing them. And there needs to be, so restorative practices really talks about restoring the relationship that's broken. So like I said before, if they break a window and they get sent to bed with no dinner, the child's thinking, well, why am I hungry, but I broke the window? Whereas if their consequence, which is okay, consequences are okay, is to donate their pocket money to help fix the window, then there's a correlation there. So I think that needs to be really, really clear to the child that if there's been a core value or something that's gone wrong in the family, for one, the older they get, they need to start actively fixing it themselves and coming up to you with parents to say, this is what happened. So in that instance, turn the TV off and things can get everybody a break. But in the long run, if those consequences aren't related to the act itself, then they don't necessarily correlate to being a sustainable outcome. Steph?
I absolutely agree with everything you just said. I'd just like to add that with the TV, the bickering example is actually more annoying for the parent and the child. So you switch the TV off, you're going to get less peace. But I think for me, I would try and express your bickering, like having the TV on is causing bickering. So it makes me want to switch the TV off. So pass it back to them. Can we come up with an agreement when there isn't bickering? So for us, it's he's had 20 minutes, she's had 20 minutes, he's had more. And so can we come up with an agreement before the TV goes off so this bickering doesn't happen? Because I'm the one getting frustrated here. And I would quite like 20 minutes of TV in peace, thank you, but not to hear you bickering over it. I hope that answers your question.
Steph, the last one we've got time for today was that we've got some twins who are nearly 2, so still little ones, wanting the same object at the same time, even if there's 2 of them. What are your thoughts on that one?
I don't enforce forced sharing, because my belief in the research says that if you have something that belongs to you, then you know when you're finished using it. So the example that I like to give to parents is my phone. So often my thing is the children just take my phone, and that's how it must feel like to have your toy taken. And I was like, I haven't given you permission to use that. So there are some things in the house that are non-negotiable or special. So my phone is one of them. My jewelry is another one, which is not being stuck to. But for my children, it's their teddy or a certain toy that is brand new. So I don't enforce sharing of those things. But everything else, the rule is, if there is a book that comes into the house, it's for sharing. If there is Lego that comes into the house, it's for sharing. And in the moment when they're fighting over it, I tend to the one that's upset and I say, oh, you really want that right now? And she's playing with it. So I'm going to sit with you and we're going to wait and we're going to do something else. And then your sister will let you know when they're done playing with it. And just sit with them in that uncomfortable moment of, I'm feeling really impatient and I really want that toy right now. And that can happen at the park with the swings. You want your turn on the swing. So you ask, and if they don't give it to you, if you ask nicely, then you have to wait until they've finished. That's how I deal with it. We're on 1:33, Matt. Did you want to add, or should we wrap it up?
I think that's wonderful. Parents, thank you for joining us. And like we said at the beginning, Steph will be running another in-person workshop if you want to come along to that on the 1st of June. And the link is in the chat if you want to scroll through, but I'm sure it will be emailed out. If not, we really, really appreciate your engagement and your participation on 1:30 on a Tuesday after a long weekend, which is excellent. Thank you for doing that. But that's it from us today. We appreciate your time. You're welcome to log off and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Steph, it's a pleasure chatting to you as always and getting to talk about parenting and this journey that we all get to go on together.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.